From Washington, D.C., welcome to the Harness Racing Alumni Show. I'm Freddie Hudson, and I'm here today with Trade Martin and Bob Marks.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show with your hosts, Freddie Hudson and Trade Martin.
This week's Alumni Show is brought to you by Bill Houghton, insuring standardbreds and farms for over 40 years. 954-655-5547. That's the number you call for all equine insurance. Bill knows the ins and outs of equine insurance. With this year's new increased online bidding and new protocols in place, make sure your equine investments are protected. Call or text Bill at 954-655-5547. That's 954-655-5547. Call Bill now. Today's special returning guest is Steve Stewart of Kentucky's Hunterton Farms, one of the world's largest standardbred breeding farms, and Steve has some important information for the harness racing industry. Steve, welcome back to the Harness Racing Alumni Show.
Glad to be back, guys.
Steve, the last time you were on our show, we discussed the letter that you and Linda Toscano had sent out that was in support of HISA, and you had over 200 signatures from harness racing industry leaders. Was there any response to that letter from the USDA?
No, I had not received anything from them at all, or boo or anything. So, which was a little bit disappointing, I think but I think we need to preface it a little bit about the fact that the letter really didn't say we were in support of it. Basically, and I think that's probably the reason why I'd like to come back on today is to say that it's not so much that we are in support of it. What we are in support of is hearing them out, finding out, doing the due diligence that we all need to hear and learn from this. I mean, I think it's a thing in motion with the thoroughbreds also, and I think that by us as an industry not participating and being involved in a lot of the decisions that are going to be going forward is somewhat negligent on our part. So basically, the letter was saying that let's be involved in some of the decision making and to find out more or less do our due diligence, because of the fact that we all know, everybody is well aware that not everything we may not like about certain things, but I think that us being involved, we can kind of steer the ship a little bit instead of just saying we're against it and we want to say it's unconstitutional and whatever, and maybe it is, and if it is, then we deal with that too. But I think that we have to, since it is the law of the land, I think it would be silly for us not to be involved. And that's how kind of I explained it. It was interesting when we did the thing that it was very easy for me to, whenever I would talk to owners, it was very easy for them to say yes. There was, and I didn't speak with everybody because basically all those 200 people that signed or agreed to our statement was all done in about 8 days. It wasn't very long, and then we got a lot of people that came back to us later and said yes, we would like to be involved. But it was a long process when you would talk to a trainer. When I would talk to Jimmy Tactor or Nancy Tactor or Brian Brown and whatever, it would be half hour, 45 minutes, because they would explain their concerns. And believe me, I echo their concerns. I mean, the last thing a breeders or any of us want is that it would be a hardship on them. And I think that it's something that they need to be involved in. And I think that from that standpoint, we're scheduling a new talk or whatever again with them, but we'll get into that later. So, okay. But to answer your question, no, we did not hear any from the powers that be.
Okay, well, to move on here a little bit, you attended a online meeting with USADA's Travis Taggart, and last
Correct.
week we had Andy Cohen on the show, and he gave us some details of the meeting. What was your take of the meeting?
I was very encouraged by the meeting, if for no other reason that they're willing to listen, that they're willing to realize that there's another breed out there, that Tiger kept speaking of an equine bill, not a thoroughbred bill. He said that quarter horses are going to take a wait and see to see how it all plays out, because I think there's a lot of tests and a lot of things that are being done, one of which is Lasix. And we all watched the Kentucky Derby on Saturday with 19 horses racing with no Lasix. And they're kind of exploring that, and I think they're doing a lot of research concerning that. And so I was very encouraged by the thing. I was very impressed by who was on the thing. You had the head of the Jockey Club. You had, I don't know, Bill Lear, who is, from what I understand, wrote the bill. He's a very influential lawyer here in Lexington, Kentucky. And I think he was on the last one, or he's going to be on the next one that we're going to have. Then there's the next probably one. The most, and the next one. And I think that I think a little bit of the ace in the hole for us, and somebody that I think we can really speak with or whatever, is Dr. Tessa Muir. She was zooming in from, I think she was still in England at the time, but she is being hired by the powers that be to, I think, mostly implement a lot of these plans and how it's all going to work. We were very encouraged that she had a lot of, she had told us candidly that she had a lot of, not a lot, but she had dealt with standardbreds in her experience with drug testing and whatnot, which I think is very crucial for us. And I think basically we just want a fair shake. But I think that also, speaking of the bill and whatnot, I think that that we have to be very concerned that, as a breeder, I don't train horses, I sell to trainers. And I'm very concerned, and not concerned, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that this bill will have much more of a day-to-day, how you do your job influence on trainers much more than breeders. There's really not much. This bill does not tell me how to breed a mare, how to prep a yearling, how to do my day-to-day things. It does affect me because it will affect the overall how the industry is run. But I'm very cognizant of the fact that trainers have to be on board. And the one thing that we're going to do with this next meeting is that there will be several high power, whatever you want to call them, some of the who's who trainers, a few of them, not very many. Obviously, you can't have an army of them, but there'll be a few trainers on this Zoom call so that they will be able to ask some questions, because this will affect them more than anybody. But I think that they are also well aware that like us, that the status quo does not work. So basically, they understand. Most of the people, it seems like, except the powers that be in our industry, realize that the status quo doesn't work, that all these drug tests that we're doing right now really, and they don't catch anybody, and then they say, see, everything's fine. We all know it's not fine. There are, there are people out there that are trying to stretch the rubber band that doesn't need to be stretched. So you have these trainers, but on the same token, those same trainers that are very cognizant of the fact that you have a problem within our industry of drugs, that illegal drugs being used, they also are well aware that there's other issues that will affect them. They don't use the illegal drugs, but they don't, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So by having them, this can't be something that just breeders and owners say, okay, we're going to do this, and then not include the trainers, because the trainers, I think, because they're affected the most, need to have a voice, and they need to have a voice at the very beginning. And that's the one thing that I'm concerned about is, by the USTA's tact on this, they act like they don't want to have anything to do with it, and I don't think that's the approach we should have.
Well, correct. And for the next meeting, Tony Alagna has agreed to come on. He's committed, and so has Nancy Tactor. So they're both going to be attending the meeting, and of course Linda Toscano's going to be there also. So we do have some trainer representation coming into the next meeting,
which I think is crucial.
Yeah, and that's what you had brought up. You said that we have to have the trainers there. So yes. That's the first step, and we might be able to fit a couple more in there, but I do think that 3 at this time and this meeting is going to be a little bit bigger than the last one from what I can see.
Right. Well, it's very encouraging that, they could take this stance. They could go the other way, the way the USTA is going, which is, not being forthright in trying to answer questions for us. I believe that they have our best interest at heart. I think that they understand the problems, and like a lot of us do, and we've got to come to some solutions, because the status quo is not going to benefit us in the future.
Yeah, my last question now. What do you think of the USTA's lawsuit, and is it harmful to our industry?
Well, it's very, I had talked to Mike Tanner, I think, 8 months ago, and I voiced my concern about the fact that the optics were so poor in the fact that Russell Williams comes out last summer and makes the announcement that the USTA is against the Integrity Act. And so just that headline alone is very detrimental to our industry. Instead of saying, which I would think a leader would do, was we are for the integrity of harness racing, but we have some questions and problems with this bill that need to be answered before we can support it. If he had done that, that would have forced Russell Williams to actually sit down and talk and do what we're doing now. Basically, the only reason why all of us are doing what we're doing now is because, in my opinion, lack of leadership and lack of getting to, trying to do what we think is the right thing, instead of taking the approach of Steve Stewart and that group is wrong. We understand what they say, but we disagree with them. That's fine for them to disagree with us, but I don't think that they have all the information. If we're gathering information that they don't even know, how can they justify their stance, I guess is my point. If you don't have all the information, instead of saying, okay, it's going to cost the industry all this money, and it's going to bankrupt us, and it's going to do this, and we're not going to be able to use this, and we're not going to be able to do that, or whatever, I think it's still in motion how this is all going to play out, so that at the end of the day, then we can make the right decision. But if we're not there at the beginning, I think it's going to be very difficult for us to come in and later, and then, oh, by the way, we've been suing you all along, saying it's unconstitutional. I think the optics don't look very well for our industry, and I'm hoping that us being a little bit involved, not the USTA, but some industry leaders talking to the thoroughbreds or whatever, they will realize that maybe Russell and Feraldo and Joe Feraldo and them don't speak for the entire industry.
Correct. Steve, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you for your devotion to our sport. If you're buying or selling your home, Joe Rico is your go-to guy. Joe has been representing buyers and sellers on Long Island for 30 years. He is an expert in all types of sales. Don't settle for average. Call or text Joe Rico today at 516-524-4870. That's Joe Rico at 516-524-4870. That's a wrap for this week's show, and don't forget to tune in next week.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show